Okay, so are you ready to get a little weird today?
Always up for a good dose of weird. Let's do it.
Perfect. Because today we're taking a deep dive into some seriously strange territory. We're talking alternative theories about human origins, hidden civilizations, maybe even some aliens.
Sounds like my kind of party.
Right. We're going to be looking at this YouTube video. It's called The Seventh Experiment. Lacerta reveals the truth of our creation. And it's from this channel, The Y Files, hosted by this guy, AJ.
Okay, so I'm guessing based on the title alone that we're not dealing with mainstream science here.
Definitely not. Like, fair warning, this video is, well, it's a lot. A very unconventional narrative, let's just say that.
All right, so what's our mission here? Debunking myths or just exploring the weirdness?
A little bit of both, I think. We're going to look at AJ's claims, see if there's any evidence to back him up, the usual deep dive stuff. But also, I kind of just want to have fun with it, see where this rabbit hole takes us.
Sounds good to me. The weirder, the better.
Exactly. So let's start with the heart of this video story. It's something called the Lacerta Files.
Lacerta Files. Okay. I'm intrigued already.
Yeah, so these are supposedly transcripts of two interviews. They happened back in the late 90s between this journalist, they just call him K, and a reptilian being. Her name is Lacerta.
Hold on. A reptilian being, like a lizard person?
Yeah, basically. Now, we got to be up front, right? The whole premise of these interviews is super controversial. I mean, talking lizards, it sounds crazy.
No kidding, but that's what makes it so interesting, right? I mean, if it was all boring and normal, we wouldn't be doing a deep dive on it.
Exactly. So one of the biggest claims that Lacerta makes is that humans, well, we didn't evolve naturally.
Okay, so how'd we get here then? Spontaneous combustion.
Huh? Not quite. She says we were genetically engineered by this advanced alien race. They're called the ILY, also known as the Elohim.
Genetically engineered humans. Now that's a plot twist I didn't see coming.
And it gets weirder. She says we're like version 7.0 of this experiment. Apparently the first 6 versions, they were failures. Wiped out.
Yikes. Talk about high stakes. So we're like the iPhone of humanity, constantly being upgraded and improved upon.
Basically, yeah. And she doesn't stop there. She goes on to connect this whole alien intervention thing to some of those big archaeological mysteries, you know the ones?
Oh, I love a good archaeological mystery. Give me some examples.
Well, she talks about the Great Pyramid of Giza, for example.
Okay, the pyramids, classic mystery. What's her take?
So she says the pyramids weren't built by the ancient Egyptians.
They weren't. Who built them then, if not the Egyptians?
She says it was the 5th version of humanity, like 75,000 years ago. Way before the Egyptians were around.
Wow. Okay, that's throwing out a lot of established history right there.
It is. And then she brings up those underwater ruins near Bimini, those rock formations that some people think are a lost city.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about those. Always thought they were fascinating.
Right. Well, she says those were built by the 6th version of humanity about 16,000 years ago. And she says they had technology that was, well, way beyond what we think they should have had.
Advanced ancient civilizations, that's a popular theme in a lot of these alternative theories. What's the evidence for this?
Well, that's where things get a little tricky. She ties all this, like the ancient structures, even the extinction of the dinosaurs, she ties it all to copper.
Copper, like the metal.
Yep, exactly. And that's where this idea of copper fusion comes into play.
Copper fusion. Okay, now you've officially lost me. What is that?
So she describes it as this process that these super advanced aliens use to manipulate gravity, space, and time. Basically, she's saying it's like the engine of a UFO.
Wait, so copper is the key to interstellar travel. This is getting wilder by the minute.
I know, right? And she even says that the Roswell incident, the famous UFO crash, she says that was caused by a copper fusion system malfunctioning.
Okay, now that's just blowing my mind. I mean, I'm all for open-mindedness, but this is pushing the boundaries of believability.
Yeah, I get it. It's a lot to take in. But the video takes it even further. It suggests that, like today's military, they're trying to copy this whole copper fusion technology.
Seriously, they're trying to build UFOs powered by copper.
That's what the video says.
Yeah.
And that's where things start to feel a little less like science fiction and a little more, well, kind of creepy.
I can see that. I mean, if there's even a sliver of truth to this copper fusion thing, the implications are huge and maybe a little scary.
Exactly. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We haven't even gotten to the reptilian underground cities yet.
Reptilian underground cities. Okay, you're really pulling out all the stops today.
You know I love a good deep dive. So according to Lacerta, there's this whole hidden civilization of reptilians. She calls them the Turn. And they live in these massive cities underground with all this advanced tech.
Underground cities, I've heard that before, usually in the context of myths and legends.
Right. But Lacerta gets specific. She talks about places like Derinkuyu in Turkey. It's a real underground city that they found back in the 60s.
I've actually heard of Darinkuyu. Always thought it was a fascinating archaeological site.
Oh, yeah. Well, Lacerta says it's not just some ancient settlement. She says it's an entrance to this whole network of reptilian cities, like a hidden doorway to their world.
A doorway to a reptilian world. I don't know whether to be terrified or totally fascinated. Probably both.
Right. And then she brings up other sites, like the Hypogeum in Malta, even those Goot cage systems in China. She says they're all part of this underground network.
Wow. So she's basically saying that we're sharing the planet with this whole other civilization that's living right beneath our feet.
That's exactly what she's saying. And then remember those weird sounds they've recorded in the deep ocean,
Yeah.
like the bloop? Well, she suggests those might be coming from these underwater entrances to this hidden world.
Okay, so you're telling me that there could be reptilian submarines cruising around down there. I am officially mind blown.
And buckle up, because it gets even crazier. Remember how we talked about the extinction of the dinosaurs?
Yeah, the asteroid impact, right? Chicxulub crater and all that.
Right, but Lacerta has a totally different explanation.
Okay, I'm all ears. Hit me with it.
She says that the Chicxulub crater, it wasn't an asteroid. It was a nuclear weapon detonated by the Reptilians.
A nuclear weapon. Seriously. I mean, that's a pretty bold claim to make.
It is, right? But she says that's how they wiped out the dinosaurs.
I have so many questions right now, but I'm going to save them for later. Keep going.
Okay, so then, get this. During the interview, she says she showed off some psychic abilities, like telepathy and telekinesis.
Wait, she could move things with her mind? That's straight out of a superhero movie.
I know, right? But she says that these abilities, they're actually part of human DNA. Like, we all have them, but the ILY, they suppress them.
They suppressed our psychic powers. Why would they do that? What's the point?
I guess that's a question for Lacerta. But it's interesting, right? Like, even the Pentagon, they did some research into ESP and stuff.
Really? I didn't know that. But back to the reptilians. Are they all bad? Is this like a classic aliens are going to take over kind of story?
Well, it's a little more complicated than that. She does mention another reptilian race,
Yeah.
separate from the term. And these ones, they're supposedly pulling the strings behind the scenes, like manipulating world events and stuff.
Oh, so like the classic reptilian overlord conspiracy theory. I've definitely heard that one before.
Exactly. And then she brings up Earth's shifting magnetic field, like the poles moving around.
I've heard about that. Isn't the magnetic North Pole wandering around somewhere up north right now?
Yeah, exactly. Well, Lacerta believes that this shift, it's triggering something in our DNA, something that the ILY programmed into us. And she says it could lead to a confrontation with these returning alien forces.
Okay, so we've got reptilians, aliens, psychic powers, a shifting magnetic field. This is a lot to unpack. Where do we even start with all of this?
Yeah, it's a lot. But that's what makes it so much fun to deep dive into. It's a wild story, but it raises some really interesting questions, right? Like, what if there's more to our history than we know? What if we really are part of some grand cosmic experiment? And what does that mean for our future?
Those are some pretty big questions. I have a feeling this is going to be one heck of a deep dive. It's a wild story for sure. Alien engineers, reptilian overlords, it's all very cinematic. But before we get too carried away with all this, maybe we should take a step back. Like, what does science actually say about all of this?
Right, right. I mean, it's fun to entertain these ideas, but we got to stay grounded, too.
Yeah.
Extraordinary claims need extraordinary evidence, right? So let's go back to some of Lacerta's big claims and see if they hold up.
Yeah, let's do some fact checking. Where do you want to start?
Well, she made a big deal about Derinkuyu, that underground city in Turkey. It was like a secret entrance to this whole network of reptilian cities.
Right, right. And I mean, Derinkuyu is pretty impressive, a whole city underground. But as far as archaeologists can tell, it was built by the Phrygians, an ancient Indo-European people. No reptilians involved, as far as we know.
Yeah, and the style of the city, like the architecture, it fits with what we know about human civilizations from that time period.
Yeah.
Nothing really points to reptilians.
Exactly. And it's the same story with other places Lacerta mentions, like the Hypogeum in Malta. Really cool place. Acoustically weird, but there's no evidence that reptilians built it.
Okay, so what about those weird sounds in the ocean, like the bloop? Could those be connected to this whole underground world thing? Like maybe there are entrances underwater and we're picking up sounds from down there.
Ooh, that's a good one. It's definitely tempting to connect the dots like that, especially since we know so little about the deep ocean. But scientists think the bloop was probably ice shelves moving and cracking.
Ah, so science has an answer for that one at least. What about the dinosaurs? She said that a reptilian nuke wiped them out, not an asteroid.
Yeah, that was a pretty dramatic claim. But again, it doesn't really match up with the evidence. The Chicxulub crater, the iridium layer, all of that points to an asteroid impact.
Yeah, yeah, I remember learning about that in school. It was a pretty massive event, like global devastation, climate change, the whole nine yards.
Exactly. An asteroid impact would explain all of that. A copper fusion bomb? I mean, where's the evidence for that?
Mm.
And where did all that iridium come from?
Okay, good points. So what about the psychic abilities then? And that whole thing about the Earth's magnetic field activating something in our DNA?
Well, the magnetic North Pole is definitely on the move these days, but
Yeah.
there's no scientific reason to think that it's triggering some kind of alien programming in us.
Right, right. But didn't you say that the Pentagon looked into ESP and stuff like that?
Yeah, back in the Cold War, there were some programs exploring psychic phenomena, but those were shut down, and most scientists are still pretty skeptical about the whole thing.
Okay, so no proof of psychic powers either. And what about the link between our biology and the Earth's magnetic field? Is there anything to that?
Well, the magnetic field does protect us from solar radiation, but we don't know of any way that it could directly change our DNA like that. Our understanding of genetics just doesn't support it.
So basically, we've got a story with a lot of really cool ideas, but not a lot of evidence to back them up. Where does that leave us?
Well, I think it's cool to think about, even if it is mostly speculation, it makes you wonder about some pretty big questions. Like, what if there are ancient civilizations out there that we don't know about? What if we do have hidden potential that we haven't tapped into yet?
Right. It's like she's taking these real mysteries and weaving them into this whole epic narrative.
Exactly. And even if the specifics are way out there, the themes, they resonate with something deep in us, that desire to understand where we come from, what our potential is, and what our place in the universe might be.
So we've gone pretty deep into the Lacerta Files, huh? Alien engineering, reptilian cities, psychic powers. It's been quite a trip.
Yeah, it's a lot to wrap your head around.
It is. But even if we take all the out there stuff with a grain of salt, there are some interesting themes in there, like the idea that there's all this hidden knowledge out there and these powerful forces controlling everything.
Right, like we're just pawns in some bigger game. It's a pretty common thread in a lot of conspiracy theories.
It is. Why do you think people are drawn to those kinds of ideas?
Well, I think it's a way to make sense of a world that can feel really chaotic and confusing sometimes. If you believe that there's a secret group or a powerful alien race pulling the strings, it can make things feel a little more predictable.
Yeah, I get that. It's like if there's a reason for all the bad stuff happening, even if it's a sinister reason, it's almost more comforting than just random chaos.
Right, exactly. But even if we don't buy into the reptilian overlord thing, there are still some interesting questions that come up. Like, what if there really were ancient civilizations with technology that we can't even imagine? Lacerta talked about copper fusion and UFOs and all that, but even setting that aside, there are ancient structures that we still don't fully understand.
Yeah, like the pyramids or Stonehenge.
Exactly. Those places were built with technology that seems way beyond what those cultures should have had. How did they do it? What knowledge did they have that we've lost?
That's what makes those places so fascinating, right? We still don't know all the answers.
Exactly. And then there's the whole thing about human potential. What if we really do have abilities that we're not aware of or that have been suppressed somehow?
The psychic powers thing.
Yeah, that, but also just, the idea that we might be capable of so much more than we realize. It's a pretty cool thought.
It is. It makes you wonder what we could achieve if we could tap into that potential.
Right. And maybe some of these stories, even the ones that seem really far-fetched, maybe they're just glimpses of what might be possible, like a way to spark our imagination and make us think outside the box.
I like that. So where does this leave us? Should we be building copper-powered spaceships in our backyards?
Probably not. But I do think it's important to be open-minded, to question what we think we know, and to keep exploring the unknown. Who knows what we might discover?
Absolutely. There's still so much out there that we don't understand. So to everyone listening, keep asking questions, keep digging deeper, and don't be afraid to go down the rabbit hole every now and then. You never know what you might find. And that's it for a deep dive into the Lacerta Files. Thanks for joining us on this weird and wonderful journey. We'll catch you next time.